It's the middle of an Ice Age winter, somewhere in what is now southern Europe. You haven't seen the sun properly in weeks. The last of the stored food ran out 11 days ago. The animals that usually pass through this valley didn't show up this year because the cold pushed them somewhere else, somewhere you can't follow. Not with the group you have, not with the people who are too weak to travel. Two members of your band have already died. A third isn't going to make it much longer. And you are sitting around a fire, looking at the people you love, doing math that no person should ever have to do. This is not a hypothetical. This happened, not in one place, but over and over, for tens of thousands of years across an ice age that lasted so long, it's genuinely hard for a modern brain to comprehend the scale of it. And the thing your ancestors sometimes did to survive it is something most people alive today would call unthinkable. They ate their dead. And before you close this video out of instinct, stay with me, because this isn't going to be the sensational version of this story, it's going to be the true one. And the true one is stranger, sadder, and honestly a lot more human than you'd expect. First, let's talk about how bad things actually got, because Ice Age is one of those phrases that's become almost cartoonish. Mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, a vague sense of coldness. The reality was closer to a multi-thousand-year slow-motion emergency. During glacial maximums, average global temperatures dropped several degrees, which sounds small until you realize what that does to an ecosystem. Growing seasons shrank. Plant life that entire food chains depended on either vanished or shifted somewhere else. Megafauna populations, the massive animals early humans relied on for the bulk of their calories, crashed and in many cases went extinct entirely. And human bands, small groups of maybe 20 to 50 people, were left trying to survive in an environment that was actively working against them. With no agriculture, no stored surplus, no safety net, and absolutely nowhere warm to retreat to that wasn't already someone else's territory. Genetic evidence backs this up in a pretty stark way. Studies of ancient human DNA show population bottlenecks during these glacial periods. Moments where the number of humans on Earth dropped low enough that we came uncomfortably close to a very different, much shorter story. Some estimates put certain regional populations down to just a few thousand individuals. For context, that's fewer people than attend a mid-sized high school today, representing the entire surviving human population across enormous stretches of land. Starvation wasn't a rare tragedy. It was a recurring physics-based certainty that showed up roughly as often as winter did. So, here's where it gets uncomfortable, and here's where I want to be really precise about what the archaeological evidence actually shows, because the popular image of this is usually wrong. Across multiple Ice Age sites in Europe, archaeologists have found human bones bearing cut marks. Not decorative marks, not ritual marks, though we'll get to ritual in a second. Cut marks that are functionally identical, in pattern and location, to the marks found on animal bones that were butchered for food. Marks consistent with removing muscle tissue. Marks on long bones that match patterns you'd expect if someone was accessing bone marrow, which, in a starvation context, is an extremely valuable source of fat and calories when almost nothing else is available. Some of the clearest evidence comes from sites in what's now France and Spain, dating back tens of thousands of years, where the bones weren't just discarded afterward. They were processed the same way animal remains were processed, broken, cracked, treated as a resource. Now, here's the part that I think actually matters more than the grim details, because it's the part that gets skipped over entirely when this topic gets sensationalized. This almost certainly was not routine behavior. It wasn't casual, and it wasn't culturally normal in the sense of being an everyday practice. The evidence strongly suggests this happened specifically during extreme famine conditions as a last resort survival response, not a lifestyle. Anthropologists studying documented cases of survival cannibalism across history, and yes, there are well-documented modern cases too, consistently find the same pattern. It happens after every other option has already failed, after the animals are gone, after the stored food is gone, after starvation has already killed some members of the group. It is, in the coldest possible sense, one of the last remaining sources of caloric energy in an environment that has stopped providing any others. Which brings us to the part of this story that I think is genuinely important to sit with for a second, because it's easy to hear all this and label it as monstrous. But the anthropological framing here isn't monstrous, it's mathematical. Think about what a human band in this situation was actually facing. A fixed, small number of people, zero external food source. A member of the group who has already died from starvation, meaning their loss can't be prevented anymore, it's already happened. And a group of living people who might survive another few days, another week, long enough to reach a thaw, a herd, a different valley, if they had just enough caloric energy to make the journey. In that specific brutal calculation, the decision to use the only remaining resource wasn't chosen over compassion. It was chosen because the alternative was that everyone died, the ones already lost and the ones who might have lived. This isn't unique to prehistoric humans either, which is honestly the detail that should really change how you think about this. The exact same decision, under the exact same kind of extreme scarcity, has been documented in modern history too. The Donner Party, stranded in the Sierra Nevada mountains in the winter of 1846, made this same choice after every other option ran out to survive. Multiple stranded Arctic expeditions in the 19th and 20th centuries left behind evidence of the same grim math. A plane crash in the Andes in 1972 left survivors facing this exact decision, and most of them lived specifically because they made it. These aren't ancient anomalies. They're a consistent, predictable human response to a specific type of extreme, prolonged scarcity, showing up again and again across completely different eras, cultures, and circumstances whenever the conditions line up the same way. Which raises a question that I think is actually the real point of this whole video. If this behavior shows up reliably across tens of thousands of years, across cultures with zero contact with each other, under identical extreme conditions, what does that tell you about what's actually sitting underneath human behavior in general? Here's the honest answer, and it's the part I want to leave you with. The capacity for this kind of decision-making isn't some ancient defect that evolution has since edited out of us. It's not gone, it's dormant. Modern life, with its grocery stores and refrigeration and thousands of miles of supply chains running constantly in the background, has simply made sure that most of us will never, ever encounter the specific conditions that trigger it. We think of comfort and abundance as the normal human condition, the default setting, the way things are supposed to be. Historically, that's almost exactly backwards. Scarcity, hard choices, and decisions engineered by cold survival math were the default for the overwhelming majority of the time our species has existed. What we live in now, food on demand, heating at the flip of a switch, is the anomaly. A genuinely strange, historically brief exception to almost everything that came before it. Your ancestors who survived those winters weren't monsters. They were making the same kind of decision at a much higher stakes level that every one of us makes constantly without noticing. Weighing loss against survival, doing the math on what can and can't be saved. The only real difference is that their math sometimes had a conclusion so extreme that it's almost impossible for a modern brain, comfortable and well-fed, to fully sit with. And the fact that you're here, reading this, watching this, existing at all, means somewhere in your family line someone made it through winters like that one. Somewhere back there, someone made an unthinkable choice so that the line could keep going. That's not a comfortable thought, but it's a true one, and honestly, it might be one of the most human things about being human at all.